Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Zone Blitz. As always, I'm Vince Miller, joined by my co-host Ashton Overholt, and we also are joined today by our special guest, Brock Miller. He is an Ohio State fan. Today is our State of the Program podcast about Ohio State, so we decided to get an Ohio State fan to give us a few thoughts on Ohio State. Bit of a rough week, I guess, for Ohio State fans. Rough weekend. Any thoughts about Dwayne Haskins, Brock, just as an Ohio State fan?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me on. I was Saturday morning. I think I sent the post to you, and I was like, yeah, it just, I don't know, it's hard to kind of describe it, but it's super sad. Like 24 years old. Yeah, and I just think of that. I don't know if you guys watched the little video where he was like a little kid at Ohio State. He wanted to be like a football player and play for Ohio State. And I just think he had an unbelievable career at Ohio State. And he, overcame lots of struggles. And then just to have it end like that, just hate to see that. Yes, sir.
Okay, let's maybe get into some more happy discussion.
Yeah.
Brock, you want to just give us a brief overview of, I guess, looking back on the last season before we kind of look forward? We have some maybe questions about Ohio State going forward, but how did you view this last season? Because I feel like a lot of fans would be pretty thrilled about the season that Ohio State just had, but it seemed like it was maybe a disappointment from an Ohio State fan's perspective.
Yeah, it definitely was. Our defense, just especially, and I know, Ashton, you've been very critical of our defense, rightly so. But I think for Kerry Combs, especially, that was the biggest disappointment for us. Failure to set the edge and just all kinds of issues on defense, everything. I think Combs had lots of disadvantages. So for the COVID thing, he didn't have spring and everything to get everything set up. So I'm not saying he just didn't quite have everything that I think that Jim Knowles is going to be able to have. Losing to Oregon obviously was kind of the first indication stuff doesn't seem right. And then I think even when we played Tulsa, the score of that game is not at all indicative of how that game went. That game was way, way too close until I think it was maybe the last quarter or something. They really got ahead there. But just and then obviously we seemed like we were getting it together. We beat the tar out of Michigan State, but then Michigan. Yeah, I honestly can say I'm 20 years old. I don't really remember ever losing to Michigan. So, that one really sucked. It stung a little bit. But I don't really remember much about that game other than it was cold and it was disappointing. Anyway.
So you have said that I have been, fairly critical of the Ohio State defense. I think, and you mentioned the Oregon game. That was the first sign of it. Where the 2021 defense, they really couldn't set an edge against any team. Really, to have success against Ohio State, it felt like you had to run the ball, usually to the left. And that if you could get outside the tackle, then the linebackers were never fast enough, or the safeties were never fast enough to track you down. And that's what Michigan had a lot of success with, and Oregon ran, the same play almost. It seemed like every other play, and it was the run to the left. And it was it's fixable. It is fixable for Ohio State. And by the way, Knowles is a much better defensive mind too. We can just go ahead and say that Kerry Combs was a little over his skis with that one. It was a little much for him. The moment seemed a little bit big, And I mean, they really didn't produce. And I guess maybe where I was critical of them, and by the way, like I don't want to be the Ohio State hater here, even though I'm not a huge fan of them, nothing personal, but it did seem like we actually knew that Kerry Coombs had a problem on defense going back to last year, or sorry, the year before last, in the game against Alabama, the championship game, where they really had no answers against. I mean, it was a great offense that Alabama had, but they really didn't have answers to that, and it makes you wonder, like, why couldn't they have made this change a year earlier? Like, what was Ohio State looking for that they thought maybe Kerry Coombs would find in 2021?
I'm not sure, but like Kerry Combs, he was on with Jeff Hafley, and I'm not sure exactly when he was hired, like Jeff Hafley and Greg Madison. And then I'm thinking they thought since Jeff Hafley's defense was so salty that he could kind of replicate that. But if you look at Combs' career, like if I remember correctly, he's like never been like the top dog at ever. And so like I think that's indicative of like why should he be the top of anything? He's like fairly, like, I don't know how old he's fairly old at this point. He's never been a defensive coordinator or anything like that. And what makes you think he's going to succeed now in 2020, 2021? And I just not entirely sure why we decided to do that, but it was not the best of outcomes.
So it seems like maybe they were just looking for continuity from Hafley and thought that the longtime position coach, I think he was a position coach with the Titans maybe before too, but maybe they thought that would work out. I think it's almost an underrated thing in college football as someone that knows what they're doing in that position. It's the reason, it's the number one reason for concern for us Notre Dame fans with Marcus Freeman, because everything he does seems like like he's doing a really good job. It's just he's never done a head coaching job before, and so like I think that there's something to that, like where that is a legitimate concern anytime you have someone filling a role that they've never filled before. But now Jim Knowles is the new hire. And obviously we haven't actually seen him coordinate any games for Ohio State yet. And I would imagine you have a few, like you've heard probably a few things about spring practice and the way it's been going. What were your initial thoughts on the Jim Knowles hire, and what do you think about it now?
Jim Knowles, from the Big 12, I knew that they had like a top 4 defense. They were number 4, I believe. And I knew about that. I didn't really know much about Jim Knowles, but I was trying to do some research on him, and his defense was extremely good. And I'm really excited about him coming in and fixing that. I think initial thoughts were very excited, and now I'm even more excited just because of some of the things. I was reading an article from 11 Warriors the other day, and it said the Ohio State defense is actually being confused by Jim Knowles defense. And I'm like, if our offense is confused by his defense, then he must be doing something right. But I think just watching some of the Oklahoma State stuff, and I've seen some like deep dive like analysis into his defense, and it's super interesting. His scheme, his mind is extremely sharp as far as the defensive scheme goes. Like, I don't know if you've heard of he calls it a Leo, and like the Leo, basically we haven't had a Leo yet, or he's still trying to find Leo at Ohio State.
That's like a hybrid linebacker safety, correct?
It's a hybrid linebacker safety. He can either he can spy the quarterback, he can drop back into the flat and cover that area over to the sideline, and he can pass rush, whatever. Just like wreak havoc for the offensive line and stuff like that. But yeah, I just think I'm very impressed so far with some of his just all the things that he's done, and I'm super excited about our defense. He has said it's going to be a safeties oriented defense, so I think that is always it's a good sign. I mean, I would like to see more of a defensive end, like our defensive line I think is going to be very good, but hopefully better than last year. But yeah, it's lots of things to be happy about as far as our defense goes.
So you talked about, we talked about Oklahoma State's defense last year. You're right. They were actually number 3 in the nation in yards per game,
Okay.
behind only Georgia and Wisconsin. They had they stellar, no doubt. It was a really good defense in what we thought was a very offensive league in the Big 12, and he really did a great job at shutting them down, no question. He does get a transfer, and we talked about like the safety role. He's getting in Tanner McAllister, who actually is going to get some buzz. Is probably like a first team All Big Ten guy. Like in the preseason, he's has kind of had some rave reviews, and people are kind of swooning over him a little bit, and just the limited amount that we've seen of him so far. But is it at all a concern, the linebacking core and the linebacking play for Ohio State, where it seemed like last year that was as critical as anything, just to well, the lack of ability to stop the run is, I mean, that is kind of the linebacker's job, is to keep to make a 3-yard run, going to 8, 8, 9, 10 yards. And that's where it seemed like they didn't do a great job. Cody Simon's back. Steel Chambers, he'll be back around, again. And they have some guys with quite a bit of experience. Is there belief that those guys are athletic enough to make those plays last year, and were just confused by the scheme? Whereas maybe more my take would have been that they weren't the right guys to be running that defense.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're absolutely athletic enough. I think you'll see guys like Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers be huge in that. Cody Simon is back, I think, in limited capacity. He might not even be available this spring, but you'll see. And then there's some of the Taraja Mitchell, another one. I believe they'll be athletic enough. That still remains to be seen. It's still really muddy, in my opinion, as far as who's going to be all the starters there. And obviously, even Cade Stover did a brief stint there at linebacker, and he's obviously back at tight end now, which is thankfully, we'll get to that later. But and as far as I believe, I guess that, in my biased opinion, that we'll be fine at linebacker, but it does raise a few questions as far as who's going to be that, and even who's going to be Jim Knowles' hybrid safety guy. We don't really know who that guy is going to be. But yeah.
So moving on to maybe the defensive line, I would say, I mean, Ashton mentioned a little bit about having trouble setting the edge last year, but it seemed like it was almost all the way across the defensive line. The last year or two, I would say, hasn't been quite as good since you lost some of the studs you've had on the defensive line before. Is there any worry about Larry Johnson, the legendary defensive line coach? He's 70 years old now? Is there any worry that he's maybe not quite what he used to be? Or is this more of the personnel was bad, or is it just that Kerry Coombs kind of screwed everything up?
So I think part of it is definitely a talent. We don't have Chase Young.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my answer. No. And we also don't have Zach Harrison anymore either. And I think, yes, he's older, but I think if Jim Knowles, I don't know, according to, and I've watched some of the practice, the defensive line looked really good. And there's even a little bit of depth there compared to the offensive line. And maybe the defensive line looked good because the offensive line isn't exactly the best right now. But I think I don't really have a ton of concerns, just as long as everybody stays healthy. Tyler Friday is unhealthy right now. I'm not sure when he'll be back. And just, Jean Baptiste, I believe, also. And as long as everybody stays healthy, and our defensive line should stay all right. That's not a very convincing answer. I realize that, but yeah.
You will get you. Zach Harrison actually will be returning for one last year. This was at least as a yes,
Okay.
yeah, no, that is current. So he is.
Sorry.
Harrison actually will be back. So that I mean, you're actually catching a break here with that. But I kind of wanted to transition a little bit to the offensive side, which is the moneymaker for Ohio State. As much as we complain about their offense was by far the best in college football last year, and I don't think anyone will fight you on that. No reason that they won't be elite again this year, even missing Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson. It actually didn't matter. You might even have a better receiving core this year, as crazy as that could sound, with Smith and Jigba just continuing to grow up, and Marvin Harrison Jr. like just showing out all the time in practice. He doesn't get just a whole lot of playing time, but he's excellent there in practice. And Julian Fleming maybe kind of coming into his own. People kind of forget he was actually rated higher than Smith and Jigba was. Coming out, he was the number one receiver in his class, I believe. So, like, there's an unbelievable amount of talent there, just like in the receiving room alone. Plus, you throw in Travion Henderson, C.J. Stroud with a year of experience now. There's no reason that this offense can't go number one again. And like, as much as we do want to kind of throw the defense under the bus, this Alabama, okay, so the Alabama team this year, which like that's the gold standard, right? That's what we compare everything to. Me and Vince are of the opinion that they are going to be almost impossible to beat this year. And I'll probably bet them to win every game. I'll probably even have them winning the championship. The only team that in my opinion, currently, that I could see as a legitimate competitor at the end is Ohio State, and it's only because of that offense. It's because of the ability to be special in the receiver room and as like just have special talent as at all skill positions with Travion Henderson, C.J. Stroud balling as well. What's an Ohio State fan's opinion of just the way that they've been able to just amass receivers, like multiple NFL top end talents in a room, and guys that are having to wait their turn to play? Like there's NFL receivers that are on the bench, like they're not starting. What's the feeling around Ohio State just as to how well Brian Hartline has recruited that position?
I was going to say Brian Hartline has just done an unbelievable job at recruiting those guys. And I mean, just, like you said, the absolute wealth of talent that we've gotten, like the best wide receiving core in the nation. And sorry, what was your question about the
No, just like how he's been able just to stack talent on top of more talent. Like, is it at all a concern that Hartline leaves, or like does he going to want an offensive coordinator position? Is he going to want a bigger like a co-coach? Like be one of the main dudes. Whereas for now he's been elite, no doubt, but he does have to kind of be under Ryan Day. Is there any concern that he'll be wanting to step out, leave the program?
I don't think, I mean, there's obviously always greener pastures. I mean, he is an Ohio State alum, so I think he's got that going for him. Like he wants to be there with Ohio State, I believe, because he scarlet and gray, he bleeds scarlet and gray, and he's an Ohio State guy. And so I think just his passion for the game and just he's very, very smart as far as passing coordinator, wide receivers coach. I don't think there's a ton of concern for him leaving right now. But as far as co-head coach, I believe, so like Larry Johnson is the co-head coach right now. Maybe he could, I'm not sure how much longer Larry Johnson will be there. But like, I'm not sure that really would interest Brian Hartline at all. I don't think there's a ton of a concern with that.
Obviously, we know C.J. Stroud, Travion Henderson, the receivers. That pretty much leaves, well, other than tight end, which Ohio State does not utilize much, the offensive line. Like if we're talking about the offense. And it seems like, yes, we've talked about how the defensive line was a bit of a struggle last year. But it also felt like Ohio State's offensive line was not quite as dominant as maybe it was expected to be. Not that it was bad by any means. It had a couple of good tackles, a couple of good interior players. I believe you lose both your tackles, and DeJuan Jones, who is naturally a tackle anyways, slides out. Is there any concern that maybe the offensive line could be an issue? I know there's a new coach there too. Did you also feel like it really underperformed last year? And also, along with that, do you feel like that is in line to just pick up right where they should be?
I think they should pick up. I don't know. They are so with the new coach Justin Fry. I believe he is doing a good job as far as getting his guys in there. But then depth, I think, is a big concern, and Day has even mentioned that. But like Paris Johnson, DeJuan Jones, I believe, are all very good linemen. But last year they definitely underperformed. Sorry. And yeah, I'm excited to see this year. I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen with that, but yeah.
So with the Michigan loss from last year, right?
Ouch.
It was a right. I mean, that's exactly how I think Ohio State fans felt about last year. Like just the taste in your mouth having lost that game. Ouch was kind of the way they felt about the whole season. We can roll through the schedule for 2022. There's a lot of us out there that feel like Ohio State will roll through the Big Ten and cruise, really. Like, I actually think that you really can cruise to a Big Ten championship and a playoff berth. I'm higher on Ohio State for next year than I was a year ago, if that makes sense. I'm much more bullish. You have a very difficult game, week 1, against Vince's Fighting Irish from Notre Dame. Other than that, you have a very gettable schedule. Like until you play Michigan at the end, you're going to be favored in each game, probably by 2 scores or more. Any reason to believe that you guys won't go undefeated?
I don't think there's a reason. Notre Dame is definitely my biggest concern right now, and obviously always going to be Penn State, always going to be Michigan State. That's always going to give us a little bit of trouble. But I think, Notre Dame, I guess, might score 45, but Ohio State's going to score 60. I think, and with that Marcus Freeman is very interesting to me. I'm very excited to see how that goes. But and like I said, the offense was being confused by Jim Knowles' defense. I think there's like a cat and mouse thing with the offense and defense right now, and they think that the defense is the bad guy, but really the bad guy is going to be Marcus Freeman. I don't see any reason. Let me see here. Okay, so we play, and even our non-conference games, like Arkansas State and Toledo. Come on, all cupcakes. It's almost like the Clemson cupcakes, and just,
Somehow an Ohio State fan brought up Clemson. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, I need to. Yeah, right.
So an early line just came out, just like this last week for the Ohio State Notre Dame game. I think it had Ohio State minus 10.5.
Yeah.
Does that feel about right, or do you think maybe that Ohio State should be a full 2-touchdown favorite on that one?
Oh, I think that was definitely a little bit generous. No, I think it should definitely be. I mean, it should be higher than that, but it's 10.5. I think we'll be able to cover that. But that's definitely, I think it's a good line. But I could definitely see it going up from 10.5. Yeah. Just in my honest opinion.
I wouldn't be shocked either as a Notre Dame fan. I mean, I'm relatively cautiously optimistic, but I feel like Ohio State, probably by kickoff, I would imagine them to be 13.5, maybe a 14-point favorite. But
I think at the most, I don't think it goes much more than that.
Right.
Okay, so just to kind of to finish up your schedule, it's Notre Dame, Arkansas State, Toledo, which you mentioned, like kind of your cupcakes after Notre Dame, and then you go Wisconsin, Rutgers, Michigan State, Iowa, Penn State, Northwestern, Indiana, Maryland, and then you finish up getting Michigan.
Yeah, we open with 5 games at home.
Yeah,
5 in a row at home.
Right.
It's
You don't play a road game
hardly
until
any-
Michigan State.
Yeah, exactly.
So have the over-unders come out for the season yet, Vince, the Vegas odds? I haven't been able to find those yet. I think they're just beginning to come out. Like for the season win totals, that's like something that we like to do here on the pod just to kind of keep track of where teams will be. But this has to be like an 11.5, right? Doesn't this have the feeling of like it needs to be 11 or 11.5 as their over-under? Because like you just look through it, there's not many games for them to lose here. Like in what world do I think that Michigan is going to be able to come out and beat them, given what they said to Ryan Day, born on third and thought you hit a triple? Like do we really think that they're not going to be just on fire in that game and hand it to Michigan when we're not sure what Michigan has at quarterback? We feel much better about Ohio State's skill players. And by the end of it, the defense might be a wash, like if Knowles improves the defense. So
yeah, my prediction would be 11. I think it'll be an even 11. Just because you do have Notre Dame, Michigan, Wisconsin, Penn State. Like there are 4 teams that might have a 25% chance to get them. So to me, I think the number will probably be 11. If it's 10.5, I'm hitting the over easily.
Right.
At 11, it's a little tougher, but I could very easily see a 12-0 season. Brock, I guess as the Ohio State fan, we know Ohio State fans are always very well thought out and have a very level-headed take. So what is your take on what Ohio State's record will be?
Nice. Ohio State's record. Let me
You
see
can just
here.
say 12-0. You can just say 12-0.
I believe 12-0, 11-1, maybe if there's like a fluke loss to Purdue or whatever. No,
You don't have Purdue this year. Yeah, you
I
don't
realize
have Purdue, so you're fine.
I realize we don't have Purdue, but like
That would be the toughest game, right?
Yeah, it would be. But yeah, I would say 12-0. And that's not me being cocky. I believe, like, I don't really see a way. Like I said, there could be the fluke. Wisconsin comes in to the horseshoe. We're at home. I think that we can probably take care of them there. But obviously we have to go. So we have to go to Penn State. So that I think will be probably our toughest test. I would say Notre Dame will be our toughest test. Penn State will be our true, like the true road, like the road game. I don't know, that environment is something else. And that'll be, I think, our hardest game.
So you transition a little bit from that, and you're feeling pretty confident about the Big Ten schedule. Transition out to nationally, like how do you see Ohio State stacking up nationally against some of these teams? Georgia's defending champs, right? They're going to have a really good team again this year. Alabama, we think, is as dangerous as ever and has a chip on their shoulder, which is like unbelievable. Saban's going to get to play the underdog card all offseason. Like they're going to be unbelievable this year. They just will. We think Notre Dame will be pretty good. We talked about them a little bit. USC kind of is trending upward, right? In where is Ohio State stacking up? Even kind of with Michigan. Michigan went to the playoff last year. And
Right.
in more of a national landscape, kind of a playoff landscape, where does Ohio State fit in with those teams? Like, where do you, as an Ohio State fan, feel confident? Like, well, we can beat Michigan, we can beat Notre Dame. How do you feel about Alabama then? Like, where does an Ohio State fan kind of fall on the national scale?
I think that it's definitely Alabama, Georgia. Michigan is good, but I believe that we're probably better than them. But that can come back to bite me, obviously. I would say Alabama is definitely number one as far as that. But I think Ohio State is right there with everyone. Like we we're top 3 team. Like, I would say probably Alabama. Alabama is very annoying because they have all these running backs and they get Jahmyr Gibbs yet too. And like, it's just not fair through the transfer portal. And like last year, they got Jamison Williams through the transfer portal from Ohio State. And it's just like, it's almost laughable that like someone goes to Alabama to get more playing time. And they just have an embarrassment of riches. And I think Alabama is the biggest threat to everyone. And I'm not going to say they're my pick to win the national championship, but like there would not be any shock whatsoever if they would win the national championship again. But as far as on a national scale, the Buckeyes are right there in the top 3. I would say the top 3 would be the Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, not in any particular order, just like that would be my 2 cents on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does feel like Ohio State, knowing they did not win the Big Ten last year, it still feels like they're not measuring themselves necessarily against the Big Ten. They're measuring themselves against Alabama, Georgia, and maybe Clemson still, maybe. But that's kind of the group that they are measuring themselves against. They do also recruit a lot against Oklahoma. That's a little bit shifting maybe to USC with Lincoln Riley. So maybe just recruiting. Like
Lincoln Riley is a smart man. get out of Oklahoma before they move to the SEC.
Yeah. What are you worried at all about? Because it does feel like some of the programs that have been a clear step behind Ohio State recruiting wise. You have USC hiring Lincoln Riley, Notre Dame with Marcus Freeman, who we don't know if he'll be better than Brian Kelly, but we know he'll be a better recruiter. And you have Georgia, obviously, just the way they've been kicking butt on the trail. They recruit against Ohio State a lot. Alabama is who they are. I feel like I'm missing a few. But there's Miami. There's a few other programs like that have really stepped up their effort on the recruiting trail specifically. Do you think that has or will have any negative impact on Ohio State's recruiting at all?
I think, well, so we do compete with Notre Dame a lot. And it wasn't Marcus Freeman like the number 1 recruiter or something like that? Like
right now, he's ranked number 1 on 24/7 Sports' recruiter rankings.
Yeah. And so I think, Miami and I'm not sure that it affects it just a ton. I mean, these kids, they go to, I guess, who, I think our recruiting is going to stay really well. Like in my mind, we'll be at least top 6 from what it seems anyway. But, and we've picked up some like Malik Hartman, and then, and with I think our improved defense is obviously going to be a bigger, and Jim Knowles, I believe, is going to help a lot with that. Yeah. And
we know that you have the embarrassment of riches at receiver, so you'll just go ahead and let us have Carnell Tate then? Is that cool?
No. When is he like committing or whatever to that?
Nothing set. Sounds like Ohio State has kind of been the favorite for a long time. Tennessee is weaseling their way in there. I wonder how they're doing that.
Sounds sketchy.
Yeah. Anyway, I just thought I'd bring that up as that's one of our biggest needs for sure. Definitely not Ohio State's. Go ahead, Ashton.
It is fair to question where where these recruits are going now, because I mean, if we're looking at it objectively, there's a lot more teams at the big boy table now than there was 2 years ago, with the emergence of Texas A&M citing the greatest class of all time, right? Oregon signed a 5-star yesterday, and now they think they're for real. Notre Dame has stepped up their recruiting. Miami has, and we don't think about it. Penn State actually had a top 5 class last year as well. Like, there's a bunch of teams that are kind of circling and feel like, hey, we're actually coming to play now. Tennessee, that remains to be seen. I mean, we know they paid a lot for Nico, and if they can partner that with some skill players, like they'll put together a good class. So it does. There's only a certain amount of these 5-stars to go around. Whereas the last couple of years we're used to seeing Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. They get whoever they want. Everyone else kind of gets the leftovers. does like it's okay to feel like there's 10 teams now they split all the 5 stars, and then it's everyone else. Like it feels like the top bit of college football has gotten bigger, and maybe like the players, like it's going to hurt Georgia. I think Georgia's going to be hurt by the fact that Miami's actually coming to play now, because Georgia raids Miami, and so does Ohio State. They go get all kinds of big time players down in the 305, and that's where we go. That's where we go to get our 5 stars. And Miami's going to try to keep those at home. And so like it does affect Georgia, like teams like Georgia and Ohio State, I think a little bit, to where they're not going to be able. I mean, and yeah, whatever. You can say, like, okay, what a pity party for Ohio State. They only get 4 5 stars instead of, the usual 7. But like it is, after a while, it's going to continue to take a toll, I think, with other teams. I think other teams are catching up, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's fair. I think even like the schools with like the higher budget. Okay, Texas A&M got more 5 stars in the entire Big Ten conference. That's absurd.
Yep.
Like, I mean, so I don't know. Like the NIL, I think that obviously has a lot to do with that. I mean, the majority, like
Jimbo said it doesn't though. Jimbo told us that was not anything to do with NIL.
Jimbo Fisher. He's doubled down on that too, dude. Like he not only just said it, and then he's like, no, I mean it. Like it had nothing to do with it. Like you go 8-4 every year. It's okay to admit that, yeah, we paid a lot of money and bought these kids, because they clearly did. It's what Tennessee's trying to do now. Maybe that's what Penn State did. I don't know, whatever. No big deal. We won't go there. But like, I mean, LSU's not going to be dormant forever either. Like LSU is going to recruit well. Like they recruited well with Les Miles and Ed Orgeron. Like you really think they're not going to do well with Brian Kelly? Like they're going to do good out on the trail. So like it does seem to be like a little concerning. Like for me, I'm a Georgia fan. Brock, you're an Ohio State fan. It's a little disconcerting that we're not getting as many as we think that we should. Like I'm a Georgia fan. Thank God we won a championship this year. Like just thank you, Lord, because I think it's going to get way harder for the teams at the top to continue to do what they're doing. I don't think any other team's about to become Alabama anytime soon and rattle off a string of success like they did for the last decade. And I think that has Georgia and Ohio State aren't in great positions. You don't want to be at the top maybe when other guys are catching up.
So, Brock, just as an Ohio State fan, one of the interesting things to me across college football is the expectations of fan bases. And I'm curious, what does success look like at Ohio State? Is it possible to have a successful season that doesn't end with a national championship? Like, if you win X number of titles in the next decade, that it'll be a successful decade. Like, what is that number? Because in the last decade, Ohio State won 1 title, but they won, probably the second most games of anybody, and won the Big Ten almost every single year. Like, is that a successful decade?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Like I don't, like, we place extremely high value on the national championship game, which, and any other school, like if we wouldn't be Ohio State, we're a powerhouse. Like any other school, that would be a roaring success if they would even make it to their conference championship game. Like even last year, sure, it was extremely disappointing, but like the opportunity to play in the Rose Bowl, to me, it was very disappointing. But I would say that last year's season was not like what we wanted, but it was good. Like it wasn't like a fluke, like a 2011 year for us when we had Luke Fickell. Stuff like that. But like you said, what would be kind of success in the next 5 years? I think it's not unfair to say that Ryan Day will get a national championship. I don't think it's if, I think it's when. But as far as success goes, I mean, I don't know. I think getting to the playoffs is I think that's a success right there. Like just like we have extremely high expectations, as we should, but I believe there's no reason we can't win a national championship game within the next 5 years. But if we don't, I would not consider that a failure either.
So is it at all fair to kind of start putting him in the category maybe where Kirby Smart was before last year, where it's, it feels like they've accomplished everything but win the championship game. I mean, Ryan Day's won a playoff game. He didn't just make the playoff; he actually won a playoff game and played Alabama. And losing to Alabama, I think it's a little unfair. Like, just as a Georgia fan that's had to go through that a bit, it's unfair to everyone else. Like, I think it's unfair to Ryan Day. It was definitely unfair to Kirby until he won this year. The fact that Saban makes it look so easy, and like that's the metric that we're holding these new young coaches to, is to the greatest of all time. Like, because like Saban's going to go down as the best to ever do it, right? And now Ryan Day has to kind of try to catch up to that, and like how unfair that is. But there is an element of that is almost good. Like, there's going to be, I think there's probably more pressure on Ohio State maybe than you do. Like, I would think that there's actually quite a bit of pressure on Ohio State to win a championship. And I think there's pressure on Ryan Day to win a championship if he doesn't do it in the next year or two. If he lets this offense and this amount of skill position players go, because we're going to be seeing all these guys start in the NFL. Like Marvin Harrison, he's going to start. Like Jackson Smith and Jigba, he's going to start. Olave and Garrett Wilson, that was one receiver room, and they're going to all be starting NFL wideouts. CJ Stroud will probably be a top 3 pick. And you're going to have to look at all those guys and be like, we didn't win one with them. How hard is this going to be? And I think that puts pressure on him. And it's kind of his own fault a little bit, like for recruiting so well and developing so well. But is there, like, where's the sentiment for most Ohio State fans? Because most of them that I know are a little irrational. No offense. They're a little they're fairly irrational about expectation. You've said that it's not a big deal. And like,
well, not a big deal. I don't think I said that, but
okay.
Okay. So I came across like it's not a big deal. Like to me, it is a very big deal to me. And like Ryan Day, yes, he has a lot of pressure, but he's 34 and he's lost 4 games in his tenure at Ohio State. Like that's crazy. And like I said before, it's not a matter of if he wins the national championship. He's going to, in my opinion, he will win a national championship game at Ohio State. This year we have an extremely good chance. I don't know, but I would say, like I said before, within the next 5 years, I believe we will win one. But like you said, most of Ohio State fans have extremely high expectations, as we should, because of the absolute wealth of talent that we have. And like, if we wouldn't win a national championship game, I think that would be extremely sad because of, like you said, all the NFL talent that we have on our team. And so, yes, Ryan Day does have a lot of pressure, but I think that Ryan Day is an extremely good head coach. He's very smart, and I believe that for what it's worth, I think we'll win the national championship game, and I think he knows that he probably has to. Yeah.
You say you do think you will win the national championship game this year, or
no. I said we have a very, very good chance.
Sometime in the next 5 years you'll win.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say that.
Yeah. So I'll just put a gun to your head right now. I like doing this to people. Not literally, guys. Calm down. So prediction for 2022 Ohio State. We kind of asked you the record already. Where do you think Ohio State's season ends? Is it in the national championship game? Do they win the title? Are they runners up? Do they lose in the playoff? Do they lose to Rutgers? Where does Ohio State's season end? No one is going to come knocking on your door in 9 months and hold your feet to the fire on this one. Just go ahead and give us your gut feel right now.
I think it'll be Ohio State and Alabama competing for the national, if not in the national championship game, in a playoff game. And I honestly believe that we can beat Alabama. So I think we can win the national championship game. but I also am terrified of Alabama. So there's both. I think I can speak for everyone, and everyone can say they're terrified of Alabama. But
Yeah, Ashton, I feel like you could probably relate to the exact sentence he just said.
Alabama is like, I'm not a big Star Wars guy, but like Darth Vader, like that's what Saban is. Like I've so many times on April Fools, like it's like Saban's retiring. He's retiring, guys. Like the reign of terror is over. It's never over. He will live for forever, and he will win half of the championships. It's just how it is.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah,
go ahead,
gun to my head, I would say, yeah, Ohio State will win the national championship game, but Saban. So I don't know. Yeah.
So, okay, for me, I will probably, like I've mentioned, I really like their offense this year. I really do. Like that's not a joke. I think Ohio State's offense is going to be the best in the country again, number one. I mean, injuries can do incredible things, and yeah, we don't know what'll happen there. I think there will be an improvement on defense. I don't think any number is too high for them in the regular season. I think 12-0 is a likelihood for Ohio State. I think they cruise into the Big Ten championship. I think they win the Big Ten championship and go to the playoff. And that's where it gets a little fuzzy for me. I don't know how they would match up with a Georgia that could be a playoff team. I don't know how they would match up with, we mentioned Alabama, but even a team, Clemson could possibly, like in a bounce back year, I think Clemson would be a little bit tricky. So we've seen Ohio State struggle a little bit without of Big Ten competition, with non-conference competition. That's like, we can say that they have, that's been a different thing. I mean, it's very difficult to win at that elite level. I think Ohio State is the best in the country until they play Alabama. I think it'll be in the championship. I think Alabama will win it all this year. And I think it'll maybe be a little bit unfair to Ohio State because I think this Ohio State team is going to be significantly better than last year's and will be in some years of college football, this Ohio State team could win a title. They're just happening to go up against the Heisman Trophy winner and the greatest coach of all time. So they don't. And yeah, it's unfair. It's unfair, but I would have them finishing second. Vince, what about you?
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I come out on it too. I think Ohio State has a good shot to go 14-0 and then lose to another 14-0 team. Like I do think that those are my pretty clear 1 and 2 for next year. There's a chance. Obviously, there's a chance that a Georgia does it, or a Clemson, or Oklahoma, Notre Dame. Like there's 5 other teams that have like an outside prayer. If it's a little different if you're talking Georgia. Like for Georgia, probably 3 questions need to be answered really well, and for all the other schools I mentioned, maybe 7 questions need to be answered really well. Like. Right. But I do think that there's a clear top 3 talent-wise, and I think that Georgia probably lost the most of those 3. So I'd go Bama and Ohio State, but I think Bama is probably my choice to win the title. As of today, April 11th, way ahead of the season. So
subject to change.
Yes.
Hey, I have some Vegas odds, championship odds. Y'all want them?
Oh, yeah, sure.
So it goes right now. Bama is number 1. Number 2 is Georgia, actually, which is surprising for me. 3 is Ohio State. 4 is anyone guesses?
Try A&M.
No, Clemson.
Okay.
Clemson's 4, A&M 5, then USC, Michigan, Oklahoma, Oregon, then Notre Dame right after that. So Notre Dame a little farther down on the list maybe than what we would have thought.
Yeah. Yeah. Brock, does that sound? Oh, I guess I should ask you, Ashton. What exactly were the odds for Ohio State?
Ohio State is plus 550 right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Brock? Does that sound like easy money to you?
I don't think it's ever easy to win a national championship game.
Right. Yeah. But
plus 550. What is Alabama? Who's won? Alabama?
Alabama is 1 at plus 213.
Wow.
So yeah, there's a lot of there's going to be people are going to be heavy on Alabama, which almost makes me feel like not good about it. Like, yeah, we all know they're going to be so upset, and yeah. Anyway, whatever. I know are we getting close to time?
Yeah. You guys have any further thoughts on Ohio State before you kind of wrap this up?
I don't think so.
Okay. Ashton?
I'm excited to see the defense. I think defense, we know what the offense is. They're going to be special again. The defense and how they gel and how that new system and scheme is implemented. And can he make the linebackers look a little faster, please? Like, that's maybe where I would be. And if that happens, this guy is really the limit for this Ohio State team.
Yeah. I would probably, my only concern really would be kind of what you said, the lines, both sides of the line. And then I think there's a chance, because Jim Knowles' defense is fairly complex, like there's a chance it takes a year for the players to learn it. I don't know. But you're also...
I think that's one benefit of having Tanner McAllister there. He's been with Jim Knowles for a long time, and he can kind of, and he's even talked that he's been explaining to the players kind of like what's going on and how Jim Knowles works a little bit. So I think he's extremely valuable to the team as far as learning, the players learning.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, Brock, thank you so much for joining us. I guess none of you saw any breaking news or anything before we shut this down.
We have to check. It's mandatory.
A weekly occurrence. Yeah.
No, we're looking pretty good here.
Okay.
Yeah. No, nothing new. Let's go.
Okay. All right. It's been a pleasure, guys. Again, thanks for joining us, Brock. Thanks everybody for listening. Have a great week, and God bless.